What's up, 49ers faithful? I'm Jason Aponte, joined by my buddy from another mother, my brother, we're Gold Standard Podcast Network, co-employees, right? Like now at this point, Vish
Yeah.
Kumaran. But we're going to talk about the Raiders, the 49ers game yesterday, what the 49ers need at quarterback, and we're going to take your comments as well. Just stick around for a sec. Welcome, everybody. Let's go, Niners. My name is Jason Aponte. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Vish Kumaran. He needs no introduction. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell for when we both go live. I'm sure that anybody that's here probably already knows who this young man is. What's up, buddy? What's going on, Vish?
Nothing much, dude. How are you? This is my second stream today. I don't know if I've streamed twice in the same day since COVID times, so this is wild.
So you know it's football season, man. There's going to be you being asked for appearances. You're going to have to give news right away. It's really good, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody tapping in right now. But I had a chance to take a look at the All-22 of yesterday's game, and I kind of came to the same conclusion that I came to at the end of the game with Trey. And let's just start with Trey Lance then. Trey Lance had some ups and downs. There's some times where you see some things that you say that needs to be cleaned up. There's some times where you see some things where you're just like, okay, that looks like an improvement. But I think the frustration is based on consistency. And that's the only way to really gain consistency is by reps. So it's really weird how those two go hand in hand, and yet we may never be able to see a full complement of reps for Trey to develop that consistency. What were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, I think you described it perfectly. What I called it was a polarizing game from an already polarizing player. Like if you were a fan of Trey Lance and you were high on some things that he did, there were some positive takeaways, right? One throw on 3rd and 8 to Chris Conley, the 2 on that dagger concept from the bunch. Both times he was the wide guy in the bunch and he ran a big in. And then the one right after the interceptable pass, that was a big time throw. Probably, I would say, one of the 3 or 4 best throws by a 49ers quarterback in that game. So those are the 2 positives. Then there were a couple of plays where he was dead to rights and he made a play and, he only got a yard or 2, but that was great athleticism to escape would-be sacks. And then there were a couple of off-schedule plays, right? Like the jump pass, that was creativity. So he showed all his talent. So if you were high on him before that, you could definitely point to that. But there were also moments of indecisiveness. He definitely, you could see, was affected by people around him early in the game. Now, I do think that the excuse needs to be given that he is returning from the ankle, and this was his first game back, so definitely a little jittery with people around him. Remember how Jimmy Garoppolo was first preseason game back from the ACL against Denver, so he definitely gets that excuse. And then the other thing is, hey, like on some of those sacks, there were opportunities to throw the ball. We've seen him hesitate in the past, and he hesitated a couple of times. But overall, honestly, Jason, I thought he looked improved from the last time we saw him. I thought he threw the ball more accurately than I've ever seen him throw the ball. And I thought he was mostly as decisive and confident in the pocket as a decision maker as I've ever seen him. But it's like what you said. We've reached a point where there can only be so much development that can be done on the bench. He needs to play. That's the only thing that's left for him. It's either he plays or you're never going to find out what you have. But there's not going to be this transformation happening if he's not playing football in NFL games.
Yeah, 100%. And I kind of wanted to talk about something that's been floating around in terms of what the 49ers were calling for Trey Lance. And I kind of touched on it in the pregame show. And you can only simulate pass rush for a little while, right, in camp. When the pass rush comes, somebody taps you on the back and the play continues and you're still allowed to throw. But it seemed to me that I believe that Kyle Shanahan was going to make Trey Lance try to work on things that he needed to master in a game situation. And what better than a preseason game to do it? So the idea of like, well, why are you calling so many passes from the pocket? Why are you calling so many passes from not under center, from under shotgun? It's because you want to master those things and you want to have guys who are fighting for their football lives coming at you. There's no other way to really simulate that in practice. In practice, again, they touch you on the back, the play continues, you can roll out, you throw the ball, and then you get one of those highlights that the 49ers post on their social media. In this, You're getting guys who are going to, you have to simulate what you're seeing. You have to describe what you're seeing. You have to look at it, diagnose it, do it in real time. And the other team is trying to really defeat you. The defense, obviously, when you're facing your own defense, they're not going to do anything to you. These guys are trying to win jobs. And that's what I think Kyle Shanahan was thinking. But listening to him talk, it kind of sounds like he's at the same conclusion that we're at about some good, some bad. And he was actually a little bit more, I guess he was more. He was giving too many. Not too many. He was giving more compliments than I thought he would. I'll be honest.
So I would describe his performance like this. If you look at his performance from where he was last year and all of that, this was encouraging. This was improvement. The fact that he looked healthy, right? That was first and foremost. He looked healthy. The ankle didn't seem to be bothering him. He looked ready to go from that standpoint. And then number two, just in terms of what I described, how he threw the ball and how decisive his decisions were overall, it was a positive for him as a player. It was encouraging signs, right? If you play him more, there is an opportunity for him to be a fantastic player. But I think from the standpoint of, hey, looking at him, can he be the starting quarterback of the 49ers today, which is, I think, what a lot of people wanted to see yesterday. That's where maybe it wasn't as encouraging.
Shout out to Wolf Life Wild for the donation. 2 of Niner Gangs YouTube finest right here. Love to see the collab. And again, thank you for the generous donation. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate all the love as well, too. 49ers Twitter is a really cool place, Vish. You get a mixture of opinions, people who are passionate, as much as passions rise. And, I'm probably more guilty of that than many people. We were in a space last night. And, we were just talking about what we saw in the game and everything. This was all post-game. Everybody seems to be even-keeled, even though there's a subsection of 49ers Twitter that is calling the season right now, and it's all done. It doesn't matter. Season's over. You have no depth. By the way, backup offensive linemen for every team aren't very good. That's kind of the results you're going to get if you see them. You generally – and the other thing is, what's the best part is, people are like, well, we have no depth behind these guys. Do you expect to lose all 5 guys? Because that would be horrible. If that happened, all 5 offensive linemen. If one of these guys plays next to the other 4, you can definitely do some things to take the pressure off of them. But we were talking about Brock Purdy, and I believe someone asked a question about what were my thoughts on Brock Purdy, and I said something along the lines of, I think he's a valuable instrument of the offense. He operates the offense, and that's not a slight. That's in no way downplaying what he's done, because that's pretty much what Kyle Shanahan's offense is. You have to be a point guard. You have to get rid of it, right? You have to get rid of the ball on time. You have to understand timing. You have to understand what you're seeing with the defense, and he processes very well. I don't think any of that is a downplay, but a downplay of his skills, and I think a lot of people get upset when you say that Brock Purdy's an extension of the offense and he operates the offense very well. But we got into this kind of talk about, because the 49ers are so loaded, that they really do need baseline quarterback play. Baseline, right? Now, what does baseline mean? It just means somebody who's not turning the ball over, who's operating the offense, and who is still putting the ball in the end zone, because you're not going to win football games in this league kicking field goals. And you brought up a really good point when we were talking. And just like Vish, he always makes me think. I'm going to let you take it from here so you can talk about it. But, the whole idea of just a baseline quarterback, I want to hear what you have to say, because I only got to hear 2 minutes of it, and now we can have a much bigger conversation around it.
Yeah. As long as you've known me, I think we've known each other the past 3 years. I've always probably been a bigger fan of the tier 2 of quarterback than you'll find, right?
Yep.
When I was growing up, those guys were like the Matt Ryans, the Phillip Rivers, Matthew Stafford, Carson Palmer, Tony Romo, guys that were really, really, really good, that year in and year out would be on the precipice of the top 10, the top 8, the top 7 quarterbacks in the NFL, but weren't the Bradys, the Mannings, the Rodgers, those kinds of guys. And I always thought that it was very difficult to play at the level that they play at. And I do think even today that it's difficult. So when we talk about that baseline level of play, typically I think we talk about Kirk Cousins, because we kind of look at him as the league average of, if you're better than Kirk Cousins, we feel like you can win a Super Bowl with that guy. That's just how most people look at the quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, to be Kirk Cousins, I think it's very difficult, right? How many guys do you see start 8, 9 consecutive years in the NFL, hold that job, consistently have a 95 passer rating, overcome, multiple coordinators, multiple coaching staffs, multiple regimes, to do that and remain a starter in the NFL at quarterback? is very, very difficult. So I think when we look at guys like, hey, the Niners only need that quarterback. Well, everybody that is that quarterback is employed by someone else, and they're paid a lot of money to do that, right? Like, we think you can find Kirk Cousins easily. We think you can find the level of Kirk Cousins play, and I think that's because you can find Kirk Cousins' level of play from a lot of different players over the course of one season, right? Like, Jimmy Garoppolo can have a season where he plays as well as Kirk Cousins, right? But to have 8 years the way Kirk Cousins has had 8 years, that's where it's difficult. And that's where, when we say all Brock Purdy needs to be is a little better than Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that's a little bit easier said than done. Now, he's on track to be that. He had 8 games that showed that he can be that. But in the NFL, being a quarterback and keeping that job for a long time there's a lot more that encompasses that than just your individual talent, right? There's a lot you have to manage. I don't necessarily know what you're laughing at.
I'm just laughing at the comment section. It's Jordan's comment. I'm not laughing at anything you're saying, I promise.
Okay, no, because I was going to say you can go right here, because I think that was also the perfect segue point for you to jump in there.
Yeah, I think, again, man, when you say Kirk Cousins' name, it really just strikes like a dagger in 49ers' hearts, right? And they just have this idea of like, well, you can't win a big game, and, you can't win Sunday night football games, but
Monday night too.
Yeah, Monday night, whatever it is, if it's a night game, any sort of nationally televised game, then Kirk is going to fold. But I think when you look at his production year after year and what he's done, right, in a different system, right, under Stefanski, and it's a little bit more run centric, but now O'Connell wants to throw the ball a little bit more, and he plays every single game. And I think that's the part that a lot of 49er fans kind of miss when it comes to that. Mm-hmm. And he would be surrounded by the best play caller he's ever had, and the best weapons he's ever had, and the best defense he's ever had. So we're not talking about Kirk Cousins as like the replacement. What we're trying to do is talk about this whole idea about baseline and how hard it is for you to be that good for that long.
Right.
And that deserves some praise. That deserves, aside from, well, how many playoff games has he won? Well, how many this and that? It's like, I understand that portion of it, but football's a very team game, right? Like against the Giants, right? They couldn't really stop Daniel Jones on defense. Like it really didn't. I mean, you're always going to point to Kirk Cousins throwing the ball ahead of the sticks, when he needed it on 4th down. Okay, you'll look at that. That's one play in the context of a whole game. But I do believe that, like, the whole baseline argument, and this is what made me think about it. Well, when you said it made me think about it, is like Kirk and a bunch of these guys are in a spot where they are in this tier of average, above average guys. But how many guys do you know that have been able to do it for year after year after year in two different places and everything as well too, while not being injured? The quarterback. I think the quarterback documentary gave me a lot of insight into what he was going through. Like he took that one hit in the Cowboys game, and he immediately said he felt it right again, but he played through it. And the crux of the 49ers problem is keeping guys upright at quarterback, right? And it's just, I think it's very interesting that everybody is just like completely turned their nose up at him. But if the 49ers had a quarterback like Kirk Cousins who played every day, who gave you a level of baseline and consistency, I think you might have seen one of these championships break their way. Would you disagree with that?
No, 100%. And that's where the 49ers situation is unique, because I don't think that every team you can look at and say you can win a Super Bowl if Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. Surely there are some limitations to Kirk Cousins too, but the 49ers are well equipped in a situation where they can cover the weaknesses Kirk Cousins had, right? Like I think that people looked at perhaps the Jimmy Garoppolo situation a little bit wrong. Like what Jimmy Garoppolo showed was that if you can execute like 80% of Shanahan's offense, you can win with this team and this defense. You can win like 90% of your games. You can go to the NFC Championship game. You can go to the Super Bowl. But that margin, that 20%, hey, when you go back and look at the Super Bowl, okay, fine, he missed Emmanuel Sanders. But let's rewind it just a little bit. 3rd and 5, right? Arches, you've seen the concept. You've seen the diagram. George Kittle wide open right in front of your face. Okay, he missed that throw. Fine. 3rd and 5, pivotal moment in the game. Then you go rewind the first quarter and a half, half plus of that game. And a lot of people say, well, he was on his way to becoming MVP of that game. And you look at all the passes that the receiver went to the ground to catch. Was a little bit behind him. It was just a little bit high, so he couldn't catch it and run. And you go, oh my God. Jimmy could have thrown for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in that Chiefs game before it even gotten close. Like that game could have been so different, but the passes were just a little bit off. The decisions were just a tick slow and all of that. And so that's when you look at it, those are the games where that margin of needing that quarterback makes a difference. And sure, in that particular game, the 49ers could have won with Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins, the one thing he does do is he executes an offense at a very high level. He plays on time. He's prepared on where he needs to go with the ball, and he's a very accurate thrower, especially with people around him.
Yeah, and again, this is not a conversation about campaigning for Kirk Cousins. I think it's more talking about the baseline argument because a lot of people use that argument because the team is so loaded. You just have a quarterback, for lack of a better term, that, as long as he doesn't fuck it up, right? Like that's pretty much what people always say, right? Like that's kind of the way the 49ers quarterback situation has been described. But I do think it's interesting that people have kind of said, well, we can just find baseline anywhere. I don't know if you really can with the level of consistency of just being on the field and the way that you're playing. Let's pivot real quick to Sam Darnold. So Greg Papa today, he's
real quick because I do have a tie into that conversation with Brock specifically. If you want to go there,
yeah.
Because before we touch on Sam Darnold, because what I will say with Brock specific is that I think a lot of the focus on the conversation with Brock is like, hey, his arm isn't strong enough, or like his big time throw rate is this, or I haven't seen these kind of throws from him. And I find those criticisms of Brock Purdy to be perfectly valid. But at the end of the day, this is who the 49ers have gone with their starting quarterback, and he has succeeded at some level, right? And no matter what, when you look at his success and all of that, you check his physical, tangible boxes, it's going to be below average amongst NFL starters. That's not, hey, my opinion. That's just he's smaller than the average NFL quarterback, right? He has a less stronger arm, but he's had some level of success. So I think the conversation with Brock Purdy should be less about, well, I need to see him make these throws, because physically, I think he's already shown what he's capable of doing, and it is, well, in that moment, can he do what Garoppolo couldn't? And that's, can he execute the offense at 100% when it comes down to it? And we didn't really get to find that out last year, right? Like the Seattle playoff game, he did leave a few plays on the field. Niners were way better than Seattle. They obliterated them. The Dallas playoff game, he struggled early, but the second half of the Dallas playoff game is one of his better performances, in my opinion. Not because, hey, Brock Purdy made any particular plays in that game, though the off schedule to Kittle on the kind of illegal throw on the bootleg was an incredible play. But really, it was just because he played clean in the pocket. He completed what he needed to complete, and he executed the offense when he needed to, which is what Jimmy couldn't in those kinds of moments. And so to me, with Brock, when we talk about baseline and all of that, can you get yourself to the point where you're such a machine that you just execute this offense and you can just make play after play? You can constantly get to the right spot. You can constantly throw the ball accurately. Because it's less about, hey, is his arm strong enough? Is he this athletic? Because you know what? Those things he isn't. But with this team, he can win a Super Bowl if he can do what Jimmy couldn't, and that's execute the offense fully. So if we're tying this into Brock, like to me, that's what I'm looking for from Brock Purdy next year for the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. Can he execute the offense at a level Garoppolo couldn't for an entire season in the playoffs? And if he can, well, they might win the Super Bowl, or probably will.
And I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me killed in the comments, but I'm just going to go with it. I mean, a lot of us have bashed Jimmy Garoppolo and asked for a replacement and everything, but you kind of don't know what you have until it's gone. So Jimmy did, when he was on the field, our biggest complaint with him was he not being on the field. But Jimmy did give you baseline. Jimmy gave you, the throws at times. And sure, there were some head scratchers in there. Fine. Again, like Jimmy's in that tier, that tier of like good to very good at certain times. But I do think we've kind of discounted, Jimmy. And I think a lot of the complaints that we had was just he wasn't on the field. But, as Kyle Shanahan said, when he's on the field, we win a ton of games. And when he plays the full season, we end up in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. And that's all based on what you were talking about, the defense, the weapons, the play caller. And you have to execute it to a certain degree to get there. And I think everybody kind of just took for granted that, well, we can just get any guy in here to be better than Jimmy. And we can just get any guy in here who can execute the offense just a little bit more, to give a little bit more. I don't think it's as easy as we all thought right now, at this point. I mean, now look at what Brock Purdy did. Obviously, Jimmy had never done that. But I do feel like we kind of dismissed Jimmy a little bit. And the book that we're going to write about him later on, when we look back and reflect after years, will probably be one of like, hey man, it wasn't so bad, and it wasn't as bad as we made it seem. But Gray Fox says, hi Jason and Vish. What mostly caught my eye watching Trey was the pauses were wobbly and looked slow. That's supposed to be a strength, right? Am I wrong? Vish, you could take this one.
I didn't see that personally. I thought his arm looked strong. I thought the ball looked clean coming out of his hand. And I thought the spirals with the ball spin definitely better than I've ever seen it spin when he's thrown it, for sure.
So someone called me Flav in the comments. I think that's really funny. Um, what I saw, I was impressed, and I posted the two throws, on Twitter today, or X, or whatever the hell we're calling it. The first throw was the Chris Conley on third down, and that's a third down. Got to have it like from shotgun. It's an obvious passing situation. Looked at his guy, ripped it in the middle of the field, and protected his receiver and didn't get him hit. I think that was the best throw. And then at the 2 minute drill, well, I mean, I guess it was at the end of the half, and it wasn't necessarily a 2 minute drill. He rips another one to Chris Conley pretty deep down the field. And I felt like, look, amongst all of these other things that we saw, amongst the times when he had a throw, he stared it down, didn't let it rip, amongst the times where he looked like he was a little jittery in the pocket, there's still these glimpses. And again, like, it just has to be more and more consistency with the reps. The only way for him to get the consistency is to get reps. And I just fear that we're not ever going to get that. I think that's 49er fans' biggest frustration is, if he would have been able to play a full season, and let's just say he goes through this full season and you have major red flags and concerns with how he would do it, you at least had a full season of it. Right now, a lot of people are just basing this on a small sample size, but I'm not sure he's going to get another chance. And I think that every time that he steps on the field in preseason, in practice, he has to seize that opportunity, and it's much more pressure-packed than it should be for anybody else.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I'm coming to the point that they need to part ways.
Yes.
It's not working. I look, I don't think he benefits the 49ers because they're never going to get the best out of Trey Lance if he just rides the bench as their backup. And I think we saw yesterday why Sam Darnold is better than Trey Lance, why Sam Darnold is better suited to be the backup than Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance had more highs probably. Actually, I don't know. That ball to Bronny Bell was a good ball, but Trey Lance had a lot of good moments too early in that game, and he did look good at times. But the one thing Darnold looked throughout was a little more assured, right? Lance's confidence felt like it went a little bit up and down throughout that half, whereas Darnold looked a little more assured, and that's what 55 games buys you. And I think what I learned from watching Trey Lance yesterday is that we're at a point where he just has to play. Look, I don't know if he's going to be great. I don't know if he's going to be bad, but we need to go through a process with him where we get to find out what he's going to be. He gets to find out. He gets to go through the process of learning, finding out what he can do on the field, all of that. Those are things that he cannot skip. And it's been put off long enough. And if he can't do that here, then he needs to do that somewhere else. And if you're the 49ers, if you can't do that for him here, I don't know how keeping him is in your best interest or in his best interest unless you're unable to get anything of value for him. And that, oh gosh, no way. Actually, no way. They won't do it, but yeah.
Guys, 22 minutes in here. I'm Jason Aponte. That's Vish Kumaran. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to both channels, like both videos. Make sure you have notifications on for both of us. Let's pivot. So, Brock Purdy, quarterback one until further notice. I don't think there's really much discussion when it comes to that. But Greg Papa comes out today, and he's a team employee, and he talks about how much Darnold looks better than Trey Lance, and that they're deciding now between Brandon Allen and Trey Lance. And it kind of goes in line with what Mike Silver was writing and what everybody was upset about, right? Now, there's two ways of looking at this. He's stating an opinion that I don't know. I don't know how many times he's been in practice. I don't know what's going on, right? Or he's hearing something from the building. And it's a little bit strange to hear that come out, especially the day after what Trey Lance just did on the field as well, too. And Darnold had, 8 dropbacks and 9 handoffs. And he threw probably the prettiest ball, like, in that game, that Ronnie Bell, that 9 down the field.
I will say the funny thing about that ball is that it was followed up by that disgusting out route that he missed early.
Right.
And
that's the same
Lance,
experience.
Right. But the Lance gave us that same experience that we didn't talk about, right? He had that really bad ball that was maybe his worst throw, the interceptable pass, came back and ripped his best throw to Conley. So they both had that kind of individual moment where they showed you the worst, but then immediately they were able to bounce back and give you a good throw.
And basically what Papa says is, like, if he learns this offense and if there was a game today and Brock Purdy wasn't ready to go, that Darnold would be the guy right away, right? And he has elite arm talent, all of those things that we've kind of heard. But I do think that it's kind of funny that you point that out, right? One guy has only played 5 games and he has a similar experience. One guy does the exact same thing and has 55 games of of experience, and people were like, "Man, did you see that? Like, wow, look at that!" And it's just it's frustrating how the same exact thing happens for two guys. One has a smaller sample size, but one guy is nailed to the post. The other guy is like, "Man, you see that throw? He can do that more and more and more." I guess the question I'm asking you, Vish, is this has got to be something bigger than just like people stating their opinion, right? Like, there's no way Papa just comes out and he's just saying this with his whole chest, didn't even flinch, sounded like it was prepared. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's been saying it the entirety of the offseason. And look, he might be hearing something, he may not be. But it's hard not to look at the tea leaves from just a business transaction perspective and wonder what the 49ers are doing, right? If Brock Purdy is the starter, you sign Sam Darnold 30 minutes into the legal tampering period and you give him guaranteed money, you don't think that, you signed Sam Darnold thinking he was going to sign for a third string quarterback? Who signs a third string quarterback 30 minutes into the legal tampering period of free agency with guaranteed money, right? Well, every quarterback was hurt. Okay, fine. You can sit back on that. Well, they admitted to talking about trading Trey Lance around the draft time, right? Rappaport reported it. John Lynch was asked directly about it. He didn't shut down the report. He said it was a valid report. So they were asked directly about that. Now Brandon Allen is getting meaningful third string reps. You can ask the question. Last year, they played the politics of the quarterback position back up to starters so much that they made Garoppolo reduce his base salary to a little bit lower than Trey Lance's base salary so that even in salaries, they could make sure he's the backup. Do you think now they're going to pay a third string quarterback $9 million? There's a lot of questions with this one that I'm not really sure about. I think a lot of the people that are reading the tea leaves, it's less about, hey, I think Sam Darnold's a better player than Trey Lance, and it's more about, well, the business moves that this team has made it seem like Sam Darnold makes more sense for their roster and their team than Trey Lance. I'm not sure what really happens. I don't think you can give up on Trey Lance. I wouldn't give up on him yet. I just don't think the 49ers are in a position to develop him either. And that's really the issue. I don't know how this plays out, but you're right. Like, Greg Papa isn't just saying this just because he wants to give an opinion and he hates Trey Lance. There's some real meaning that's made all of these national people talk about this situation this way.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to me to see how this is kind of played out. And I'm kind of taking my personal feelings out of it regardless. The fact that I wasn't able to watch a lot of training camp, like I really don't have strong opinions as to what was there. Like, you can listen to one person who will tell you Trey was the best, or you could listen to one person who could tell you that they were really impressed with Sam. And it's like, it's really hard to get a gauge on what's going on. My pushback on the whole Trey Lance trade thing is, for a team that can't keep quarterbacks upright, the idea now is to just move quarterbacks for someone else like Brandon Allen. At this point, Trey Lance, no matter where he is in his development, still offers you a little bit of sneakiness, especially in the run game. If you're starting to run the RPO, you want to see him with these weapons. You want to see him with the first string offense. You want to see how that really looks. And there's a lot of potential still there, even if he's developing. But sure. I don't think the 49ers are in the business of getting rid of quarterbacks. No.
By the way, a lot of me suggesting getting rid of Trey Lance is also looking at Trey Lance's perspective and me wanting him to get one chance somewhere, especially when we're at the point in his career where I think he needs that chance like now. It's like now or never for him. So that's also my personal opinion. The one thing I did want to add when we're talking about Lance as the backup versus Allen and Darnold, like, I think some of the quick game errors in terms of holding the ball and taking the sack, those are some basic mistakes that, while you might not have the highs of what he did after those mistakes, you won't have those mistakes with a Brandon Allen or a Sam Darnold because they have played more. And that's maybe more suited for a backup situation where, hey, we're really close in this game. Our starter just went down. We just need you to hold the fort and not throw this game away. And with Trey Lance, it might be where he comes in and it takes him a little time to get comfortable because he hasn't played a lot and all of that. And I don't know if you can do that midseason process with him as a backup quarterback. It's not because I think Sam Darnold is better or Brandon Allen is better than Trey Lance, but when we're talking about what you need as a backup quarterback, where he is so inexperienced, right? Like, we have these conversations at other positions, right? Like at tight end, can you go with two rookies behind George Kittle? You need some experience. Well, Lance is essentially a rookie as well. And that's where I think this conversation gets even more complicated because it's less about who's good and who's bad, or who you think is going to be good and who you think it's going to be bad. And it's more about, well, if Brock Purdy's the starter, what is the best room surrounding that? And that's a completely different conversation than, hey, Trey Lance is outright better than the other two guys, which I do think is probably the case based on how things have been reported through training camp and stuff so far.
Let's see. Let's go through some comments real quick. Jose says, I don't think Trey looks scared. That O-line didn't give him time to settle down and he get into any kind of rhythm. The kid still managed to push the ball downfield. I do think the biggest takeaway is that Trey didn't fold and he eventually got better as the O-line set. And I think that's something that's still a positive. There's still ways to be objective about the things that he needs to work on while pointing out the good things without being labeled a fanboy or whatever it is, like on how Twitter goes. So Caesar says, still believe in TL. Aponte sipping that Vino Blanco, good eye, buddy, good eye. Like Chad Henne, Jordan Elliott.
Yeah,
He had to bring it up. Chad Henne won KFC a playoff game. So again, like I just with the team and the way that they lose quarterbacks, I just don't see. I don't see themselves clear of just getting rid of people, especially when what is the value for Trey Lance at this point? Like if somebody offers you a 5th round, like are you this desperate to move off of Trey Lance just for a 5th rounder? I don't think that that's something that you really should be looking at. But
you're right. It's just if you're Trey Lance, you got to.
Why would you want to be here? Why would you want to be here?
Yeah.
If I'm Trey Lance, I walk into the office and say, listen, I know what you guys got going on here. I don't want to disrespect anything, disrupt anything. I've got to go. And either way, one way or another, unless something markedly changes, because it's August 14th and you hate to speak in absolutes, they're probably not going to pick up his 5th-year option. So he'll be a free agent next year, or maybe they'll try to look to trade him somehow, before that. I don't know. One way or another, if I had to bet, I would bet that Trey Lance is not here next year somehow, one way or another, unless something really drastic happens where either Brock Purdy gets injured, loses the whole season, and Trey Lance shows that he can actually play. Like there's circumstances where that can happen, but if we're talking about things going according to plan, which they very rarely do for the 49ers, then it would be most likely that Trey's not going to be here next year. Let's see. Cali Boy 58 says, can't think of the last QB that went a full season under Kyle, Jimmy in 2019. Worst case scenario, Trey is a very good backup quarterback. Trey's been through the fire, man, for sure. I think
I just can't see how a guy who hasn't played and needs to play is now a very good backup in the situation that, hey, shit hits the fire and the backup has to come in when shit's going wrong, and you want the 23-year-old who's needs to play and never played as the backup. How is he going to be prepared for that, right? Like usually you want a guy who's seen it all. He's been there, right? That's why Matt Schaub was a backup for years. You wanted a guy that would come in and settle the situation. How is he going to be settled in the situation when that's his chance? I think if you're Trey Lance, he's not in a situation where he should be backing up anybody. He needs to be in a situation where he's somebody's starting quarterback and they're going through the process of finding out what his abilities are and how good he can be.
And that's the thing is like there has to be a landing spot for him where, like, for instance, Justin Fields gets to go to the Bears and they're not expecting anything. You just get a chance to just let him take his bumps and bruises and go through the ups and downs. I mean, Anthony Richardson falls to the Colts. Okay, he's throwing interceptions first week. Cool. It's just the timeline that this team was on, what they expected to do. And in the beginning, it kind of worked. You start Jimmy, you make the NFC Championship game. Okay, Trey sat, time to let him go. Unfortunately, he gets injured. Now this team is on a different timeline now to where they can't afford that. They were ready to do all of those things last year. Fortunately, it just didn't work out that way. Is it fair? No. Is life fair? No. Is it the reality? Yes. And that's it. Like there should be no feelings going into this discussion based on the fact that all of these things are rooted in what you've seen instead of what you can predict and what this roster is ready to do right now. I mean, they've been so close so long. Can you really sit there while Trent Williams is talking about 1 or 2 more years? Can you really sit there while George Kittle, who plays a physical style of brand of football that is injured again, can you use him again like that? Christian McCaffrey, what are you going to get from him this year? This team is loaded up to go right now. And I think that's where the timeline is messed up. They're on different timelines. If he was on the Bucs right now and he sat behind Tom Brady, Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield wouldn't be there. They would just say, hey, Trey, this is yours. Let's go.
That's where, Jason, I do actually disagree with you. Like, okay. I don't know if they win or lose with him on this timeline just because we never get to see him actually play to figure out if they can win or lose. Like, if they lose one game, that's really our sample because he gets hurt and he's gone for a while. The issue is it doesn't matter whether they can win or lose because they have a different quarterback that they've named their starter and they're fully committed to and going with. And if you're not committed to or going with him, because I feel like if you committed to maybe you can go with him, maybe you find out you can win with him while he's developing. I don't know. I'm not saying I do know that, but they're not committed to doing that. They're going in a different direction. And now that you are going in a different direction, I don't see how this works out good for him or yourself if you just keep him around as a backup. Like, where does he then get to get better so you actually find out what you have in him? Because right now his value is not in who he is, it's in who he can be. Sam Darnold's value, Brandon Allen's value is in who they are. Right. That's what they were signed for, and that's a big difference.
And that's the thing. It's like people are saying trade him. So you expect people to give you valuable draft capital for something that they believe can happen that you haven't really seen, right? Like you would have to have somebody who is the master quarterback guru who knows exactly what they can do. Not sure that there's many out there like that. That's the thing. It's like this is what makes all of these circumstances unfortunate. It's not deliberate. It's not because the team hates Trey. It's not because of this. It's not because of that. It's because these are the circumstances. Brock Purdy performed. He had his chance. He snatched it. It happens all the time. People lose their jobs to injuries all the time. Happens all the time in almost every single sport. When your number is called, you have to perform. And when you do, you hold your job. And the same goes for when you get injured. If you get injured and someone steps in right behind you and they perform, then they'll get the shot. There's no allegiance to people who, hey, you were the guy before. We love what you did. But look at what this guy's doing. We've seen it with the 49ers. We've seen it with many teams. It's unfortunate how it's played out. And yeah, you know what? I do want a breakup to happen. So at least we can figure out one day, if Trey Lance is good or if he's not, because right now we're just going based off of a small sample size. So 36 minutes and we talk nothing but quarterbacks. We could talk about other things, Fish. We could talk about this team, right? There's other things that happen. Okay, so let's talk about this performance. I think a lot of people are not a lot of people. Some people are a little bit worried because the depth of this team, right? You're like, oh, these are guys that are gonna, are supposed to contribute. Not really a good game from Javon Kinlaw. Unfortunately, I was seeing some of the same things that I saw in that Eagles game where he was just being blown off the ball and he was ending up 4 or 5 yards down the field. And it's just like, man, is this happening again? Kevin Gibbons, right? Kerry Hyder, that like the funny thing is like the things that I really took away from this that were positives. Ambry Thomas, he just got up off the mat, right? Like he got up off the mat, right? Like we kind of just wrote him off. Didn't think he was going to make the team or anything like that. Ambry Thomas did. I think it speaks a little bit more about the fact that Isaiah Oliver was playing in that game that would let you know that he's not the presumed starter. Am I tripping on that?
I don't know what happens there. I think the best nickel on this team's name is Diamador Lenore. It's not Isaiah Oliver.
Talk about it.
So if they put Diamador Lenore at nickel, then I think the conversation changes. But it sounded like he had a really strong offseason, and they don't want the guys playing both positions, right? They didn't want Emmanuel Mosley playing both outside and nickel. And so I don't know what ends up happening. I've not been a big Isaiah Oliver fan, though I know he had a pretty good season in Atlanta last year, which I chose not to watch because I'm not that interested in it. Sorry, Isaiah Oliver. But
his lone interception was against Jimmy, right?
Yeah, I remember that play.
I was at that game. It wasn't fun.
Well, now I know why that happened, Jason. Thank you.
Because I went to the game? What do you mean? I went to the Bears game. We both went to the Bears game and they won. What do you mean?
Oh, yeah, I went to the other Bears game.
You went to that Bears game. I didn't go to that game, so that's your fault.
Dude, that was one of the most depressing experiences. Sitting through that monsoon would have been the best experience ever if the Niners won. That's a memory. When they lose, it's just, why did I pay money to endure this type of pain? But yeah.
Great Fox 198, thank you for the donation again, buddy. It's good to see you, man. This is how you know it's football season. Our regulars are back. Jason, what has me really concerned is Nick Bosa. There's no updates, and I don't like it. I personally am not worried. What do you think, Fish?
Yeah, I don't care. Nick Bosa hasn't had an offseason since he's come to the 49ers. He sprained his ankle very early in training camp as a rookie. The second year was the COVID year, and he hurt his groin. The third year was I think the ACL rehab. The fourth year he had something that they kept him out for a lot of it. And then this year he's been out. Aaron Donald got signed in 2018 on August 31st. He played every snap of week one. He's the best player on the field week one. If they get signed Nick Bosa by August 31st, whatever, I fully expect Nick Bosa to come in and do the same. Now, what I do think is a little bit of a question mark is I do think they might miss Nick Bosa's intensity and just work level in a practice to set a standard. It's not that Nick Bosa sets it by talking or being a leader, but how hard he goes on every rep, the kind of standard he sets by just leading by example and working as hard as he does, I do think they might maybe miss that. And maybe I'm also saying that now just because the energy was so low in the first preseason game. It felt like the Raiders outcompeted the Niners a little bit, which you usually don't see from the Niners, especially under Kyle Shanahan. And so maybe I'm using that to create this point for Nick Bosa, but I don't really care. As long as he signs before week 1, he's going to be fine.
Yeah, Gray Fox, I think he's going to be fine, man. He could sign 2 hours before the game and just suit up. Like, the only thing you'd be really worried about is maybe a soft tissue issue. That rhymes pretty dumbly. And there was something in here I wanted to get by, or I wanted to talk about real quick. I don't want to talk about the Yankees. They stink. I don't even like baseball. Baseball is not a real sport anyway.
Oh, okay. This year it's not, huh?
Nope. Hey, listen, it's simple. And I'm doing exactly what the other baseball fans that I follow on my timeline do. When your team is doing well, it's hooray for my team. When your team's not doing well, it's not a real sport. And that goes for every fan in here. I don't want to hear that. But yeah, I mean, you look at the overall effort, and funny enough, the Raiders are joint practicing with the Rams starting tomorrow, I believe, too. So they're doing 2 back-to-back.
Oh, man. They're getting that work in.
Yes, they're rolling right now at this point. But yeah,
you know what'll be extra funny?
What?
When we read from those practice reports that Jimmy G has thrown like 5 interceptions or 6 interceptions in 2 joint practices with the Rams. Won't that be extra funny?
It would be extra funny. It would be also funny if Stafford's lighting them up and everything as well too, because
no, that would suck. That'd be concerning.
That's the big homie, right?
Yeah.
Other guys that kind of, like, again, with this team, what I was trying to tell people before this game is there's not really too much you're going to learn about this team in this game when you have basically 19 of your 22 spots locked up, right? Like, know who's your starters, what's going on. The only things that are really, I guess, up in the air now, maybe make it 4 now, right? So, right tackle is not a question mark. You just haven't seen it from Colton McKivitz. Edge is just a question mark because you haven't seen it from Drake Jackson. I guess we don't know who the nickel corner is, and we don't know who the linebacker 3 is. But again, Vish, I want to make this point about the whole linebacker 3 base thing. You're not going to be in base a bunch. You're going to need that nickel on the field more than anything with the way that people are spreading things out. So I think that's a little bit, not overblown, because there's definitely going to be times where you want to have that third linebacker on the field. But there's not really too much that you can learn from this team in this game because every single starting spot is locked in, aside from, those spots that I talked about. And it felt like, unfortunately, this game just had like a lackluster feel all the way around, even for guys that are playing for their 53-man lives, right? Like, even if you don't make this 53, that's no guarantee that someone's going to pick you up and try to put you on their 53. So you might be looking not only for a job, but you might be looking for like a job, like after this, like that. I think that's a lot to do with it. And let's see. Leader in the clubhouse to fill Ray's wide receiver spot. I think Deshaun Jameis is the best returner. I thought that's what I saw in this game. Vish, what did you see?
Yeah, and then I think Ronnie Bell replaces him at receiver.
Ronnie Bell,
and that's where things are interesting, right? Because if Ronnie Bell replaces him at receiver, it's only $875,000 to release Ray McCloud. I think there's like 1.2 or something $1 million in cap savings. Jed York walks around with $875,000 in his back pocket. So if somebody steps up here, could be Sia to Ray.
Who's the kicker? I told you, you have to sit behind the guy who wears number 10. For everybody that's a little bit confused, Zane Gonzalez wears number 10. So does Ronnie Bell. Brandon Allen wears number 4. So does Jake Moody. If you're a rookie in this league, you need to sit behind 10 for 1 year so you can figure out how to play the position, and then you can step in. It's really simple. I mean, the 49ers have kind of given you the blueprint when it comes to that as well.
I'm actually really excited, though, to see how the kicker does next week.
He'll be fine.
But that's the question, right? Because the kicker, it's less about the talent and it's more about the psyche. Okay, we saw him miss 2 kicks. By the way, Josh McDaniels is a mega douchebag for icing him in a preseason game, right? Yeah. That was messed up. But either way, okay, he did that. He missed both kicks. Now he's going to get made fun of. Let's see how he does next week. And by the way, we didn't mention that with Trey Lance as well. That also exists. There's a lot of off season. There's a couple more preseason games for him too. Like, we could remember the first 3 training camp practices, people wrote his eulogy already then. And so this could be preemptive or this could be early or not preemptive or early, but it could be premature. Thank you. Finally found the word. But
I think again, there's too many conclusions going forward with like what happened in the preseason game. By week 4, Nobody's going to look back to the training camp stats numbers. Nobody's going to look back at this preseason game. It's not a big deal. It really isn't a big deal. Like, I make a lot of jokes. One thing about me is I'm going to get these jokes off. And obviously that was my moment yesterday, right? Like, that was my moment. But I don't want Jake Moody to miss kicks. Like, I don't want him to miss kicks. I will still not back off the contention that using pick number 99 on not a football player and a kicker is still poor process. It's always process over results. The result might be okay. You might win a few games here and there, but you still could have had a valuable football player at 99. I will never back off that. It's okay. Doesn't matter, though. I want him to make every single kick because I want this team to win. 45 minutes in, over 200 people in this live. Make sure you guys like these videos, subscribe to these channels, hit that notification bell for when we go live. A lot of content coming down the pipeline from both of us. But, Vish, I just wanted to get your overall feeling and sentiment going into the season with this team right now, because everything is locked up, right? Like, everything is locked up. They're the presumed, favorites, them and the Philadelphia Eagles, who, by the way, if you guys are worried about practice reports, today it didn't sound like the Philadelphia Eagles had a very good day in joint practice. Their first team got a little beat up. So look out. It's over for the Eagles as well, too, right? Like, we might as well just, fire the sirens for all of them as well, too. But I was asked this question, too, and I'll pose it to you because I think it's interesting. Is it just as simple as saying the Eagles are 49ers and then just everybody else has to be behind them in the NFC? Or is Seattle coming? Or, the Cowboys, are they on the heels? Like, is there anyone else that you could see jumping into that tier throughout the year?
I think it was that way last year for sure. I don't think it's that way this year. I think a lot of people look at like the NFL and they don't realize that year to year it's a brand new season and so many different things happen, right? Like the Niners. Is he referring to me or you?
The picture.
Oh,
the picture. My goodness gracious.
Oh, I get it. That's actually pretty funny. I don't know why in 15 years because.
You got it.
All right. Okay. But I don't know what to say for that actually. But what I was going to say was I think last year they definitely were, and this year their rosters look that way. But things change really fast in the NFL, right? Teams fall off a year earlier than we think they're going to fall off, and teams ascend before we think they're going to ascend, right? Like, did a lot of people think Jacksonville would be making the playoffs, winning a playoff game, and now be a prohibitive favorite this year at like week 10 last year? Probably not. And so that's where things change really fast. And I'm not sure who fits into the NFC besides the 49ers and the Eagles. I'm actually in for a little bit of an Eagles decline. I think that's going to happen. I think they're replacing too many veteran players with young ones.
You've been very on the record about that.
Yeah. I think there's going to be an Eagles decline. And so it's just difficult for me to have conversations about other NFC teams because there's so many unknowns about the rest of them, right? Like, I like Seattle, but Seattle is so young. I think they're probably a year away. Maybe Green Bay is something, but Green Bay's roster isn't that amazing that if Jordan Love is pretty good, they'll be more than just a playoff team, I don't like Detroit. I don't like Minnesota. I don't like Detroit. No, I don't like Detroit.
Why? What happened?
Their defense is terrible, man.
It's all right, man. They'll be able to score 100 points.
Yeah. But when you have to score and you're actually competing and you have to win these games and there's a little bit of pressure and you're actually a favorite to make the playoffs and you're dealing with the expectations and half your team is suspended for betting and all of that.
Damn. To be fair, Dusty Gold, I wore a Yankee jersey the day that the Yankees signed Aaron Judge and all the Giants fans had to weep. So.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I don't care.
I saw Judge go yard, actually.
Yeah, of course you did. In Chicago. Of course you did.
Yeah.
He's great.
Him at White Sox Stadium, him and Giancarlo went yard. And Mercado went yard.
Good for them, but that was when baseball was real, and unfortunately it's not real actually at this point. So
no, it is still very real. Just ask Tim Anderson.
No, it's not real. Is basketball real for the Pistons?
Dude, why do you have to go there? That's gratuitous, dude. You know what though? Did you see Cade Cunningham in the FIBA practices? He looked really, really good. Yep. I'm excited. You know what? Yep. You're not curtailing my excitement. Monday, August 14th. This is the rare time as a Pistons fan I can be excited. 10 games into the season, they might be 0-10, so I might not be able to be excited anymore. So you're not ruining this for me. I'm excited about the Pistons. Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman won't steal minutes from Jalen Duren this year. Beef Stew got the big contract. You know LeBron doesn't want to fight Beef Stew.
No, he
that.
doesn't. That's
you
the guy
know
that's
that.
running
You
through
know that.
everybody.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
100%.
we're back. Let's go.
Well, and I see people saying 9-2 Braves. Joke's on you, pal. I bet on the Braves. So who cares? I can take my feelings out of it.
Wait, why did you bet on a non-real sport, huh?
Because I know the Yankees stink and they're going to get their doors blown off because the Braves are like one of the best teams in baseball. Like it's pretty easy. But look, as far as the NFC goes, obviously things change with injuries and, sometimes things don't go according to plan, right? Like somebody loses somebody very big. Like what if the Cowboys lost Micah Parsons to CeeDee Lamb? Well, they're completely out of this now, right? Like, and then all of a sudden a team can ascend to the third role, like right there, like the Minnesota Vikings could. What if Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are the real deal? What if Alexander Madison can play the entire season? They can still win games.
What if some random quarterback takes like a random ascension, right? Like Justin Fields becomes a star.
100%.
Or
that
Daniel Jones.
Well, I think the Giants are going to make the playoffs as well too. But I do think that everybody's kind of just going to the Lions. But what if Justin Fields makes like a little bit of a leap and the Bears make it now? And if they make it, then you understand that they're not really like a threat to do anything. But the landscape of the NFC, I feel like hasn't really been laid out. What I do want to say is that a lot of people are confident in the 49ers because of the exodus of talent, right? You get Aaron Rodgers out of here. You get a bunch of guys all the way over there. All the great quarterbacks, all the elite quarterbacks are essentially in the AFC right now. All of them. And I mean, look at what the Jets just did. They just signed Dalvin Cook. My goodness gracious, man. They're like loaded, so it's more about, I think, the fact that the 49ers are a mainstay in the NFC. Their roster's loaded. They have great coaching. They've got it all together. And then kind of just everybody else is kind of fallen away with their talent. Like the only team that's really improved, and I know, close your ears, 49ers fans, the only team that's really improved and they've got to still do it on the field is, how the hell do we let Seattle get Witherspoon and JSN? And it's just like, what are we doing? Like, why are we discounting them? And then you have the additions on the line. If they're able to get a little bit more pressure, the real question is just, can Geno do it again? But it's just when you think you've got the Seattle Seahawks like out of your life and they're done, here they are, and and then again, like let's say the Falcons, right? Let's say the Falcons take a big leap, right? Let's say Desmond Ridder plays well.
So I was gonna say, if you can give me that Desmond Ridder will be mediocre, I like Atlanta a lot. I love Arthur Smith. Yep. I think they're gonna run the ball. They're gonna play defense. I think Bijan is a freaking superstar. Yep. And so I love Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Yep. The other one for me then is like Washington. Team with a ton of talent on both sides of the ball. They have a really good defense. That front, Chase Young looked good. Damn, he looked good. But it's like Sam Howell. Am I betting on that? No. Yeah. And so that's where the NFC is wonky, dude. It's wonky.
Yeah. But at the same time, you still have to bet on what you know, right? Like, so for all the 49er fans that are kind of panicked after one preseason game, need I remind you that this team usually starts 3-5. 2-2, right, 3-4, right? And they just end up getting it all together. Now, is that
or 8-0 that one time? Remember?
Well, in 2019 was the only year that Kyle Shanahan really put it together when it's that. But the question is, can you keep relying on that? Can you keep putting yourself behind the 8 ball like that? I don't think it's the optimal approach, but the 49ers have shown that they can do it over and over again, and they always find a way. The one good thing that I have to say about this game, and I think the best part is, no major injuries. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, right? Like we have Ray McLeod. That's fine. It's already done. Kittle's dealing with the adductor. Fine. It doesn't matter, man. Just gut the week 1. I don't care about you playing in preseason games. Just play, right? McCaffrey's not going to play. He's fine. Everybody seems to be in good health. Drake Greenlaw is going to be back this week as well too. So look, there's plenty of positives, guys. And I understand you want your team to show a little bit more effort. You want to see your team perform. I understand, and we're starved for football. We've been starving for football, and then you get that type of performance. It's easy to get down, but don't lose the sight of the forest looking at the trees. Like honestly, like it's just one preseason game. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And ultimately, I think that we're so used to the Niners being the young, energetic team at this point, and it's because at this point in many years past, they had a lot of young players that were still playing, still proving themselves. Now everybody on this team has kind of been through the long run, right? It's a lot of established players who've been through multiple long playoff runs.
Even training camp felt a little bit more relaxed. I think Kyle's kind of learning from like, okay, man, the culture's established. We don't have to kill each other in training camp.
Right, and that was something that, we talked about at a point last year because there was that conversation when, I talked to Tart and Tart talked about, hey, Eagles camp was a lot less thudding and physical compared to Niners camp. And I think that played into how my body felt and how my body feels. Maybe Shanahan is protecting his best players' bodies for the long run too. So they're just less.
Let me ask you this, Vish. Is Kyle Shanahan evolving? Was he learning a little bit? Yeah, and like,
well, apparently he doesn't learn. That's what I heard.
And that's what I'm saying. I love this discussion because everyone seems to have an idea what the perfect coach is, but every coach has imperfections, all of them, including Bill Belichick. Okay, I hate
including Andy Reid.
Andy Reid has imperfections. Everybody has imperfections. Love John Harbaugh. Stop going for it so much on fourth down. Pete Carroll, sometimes you get a little wonky when it comes to like what you want to do and how you coach guys up. Like,
dude, what do you think he chews real quick though? Double bubble? He looks like a juicy.
He looks like a spearmint guy. I'm gonna go Doublemint spearmint.
Dude, he's got to go through a pack of juicy fruit in a game. It's got to be juicy fruit. What else is that much?
We should ask, Seattle Jordan now, like, about it, because he's a big Seattle fan. Like, when he got a chance to meet him at the combine, he was like big fan, and I was like, yeah, he loves you, buddy. Like, but
you think he chews mint gum like that, dude? He can't drink water the entire day. His throat and mouth will burn.
I mean, he's a veteran. He's not new to this. He's true to this. Like, it's not the same thing at all, Vish. Hey, Vish, almost an hour in here, man. I think we're good, bro. Thank you so much for joining me, man. Vish, you want to make this a weekly thing, man? What do you guys think?
Sure,
let us know in the comments. You want to do weekly, like, especially as the games progress? 49ers have another game on Saturday. I think Monday is a perfect day to kind of reflect and talk back on it. I don't know if we can do Monday because, the great Andrew Pasquini needs to get his time on Mondays, and maybe we'll think of another. We'll think of another day, like in between. But
hey, that is former quarterback Andrew Pasquini.
Oh, former number 3 overall pick should have been. Everybody wants to say that Justin Fields should have been the pick. I contend that Andrew Pasquini should have been the pick.
I contend that it was that Andrew Pasquini didn't get to throw to Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk.
All right, well, we're gonna end this one here. Let's end it.
I think that was the issue.
What you guys don't see in those videos of me dropping passes is that I was the only one running, and I was horribly out of shape. I just couldn't even do it anymore. But hey, look.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the spreadsheet had Pasquini's stats as 6 for 11. And if he threw to Christian McCaffrey, his stats would be 9 for 9, and therefore he's a better quarterback.
All those balls hit some idiot in the hands. That's just, he has feet for hands. Real Cameron Latu like.
Come on.
Yeah, sorry.
Come on. Latu have to take that straight.
Hey, look, thank you guys for joining, man. Make sure you guys like both these videos, subscribe to both channels. Obviously, you guys know Vish brings you incredible content. We're both on Gold Standard Podcast Network as well, too. Go watch his video with Rob that just came out today as well. Rob's on Kay Adams' show, and he won't introduce any of us. It's whatever, man. I don't understand, how
Kay's still single. She's into shams. Like, come on, dude. I'm only like 15 or 16 years younger.
Dude, I told Rob today in a text message that wasn't so nicely worded that if he doesn't introduce me to her, then I'm going on strike from Gold Standard Podcast Network. So I just want to make sure that I put this out there.
Wait, why do you want to be introduced to her?
I want to meet her. I want to talk to her. I want to talk football with her, man. She's all over
Chicago, dude.
All right, so there you go, Vish. What are we talking about?
Okay. I'm just saying.
Hey, shout out to you guys, man. Thank you guys for joining. This is a fun episode as always. It's always good to talk to my guy, man. We don't get to talk as much as we normally do. Me and Vish would be on the phone for hours at times back in the day, man. It's just we need to get back to that and everything. But Vish is a busy man, but it's well earned because he's one of the best in the business. And brother, it's always good to talk ball with you, man.
I love it. This was awesome to do. It felt like riding a bike. You and I haven't done a show in a couple of years, I think, actually. So this was so fun.
I think the last time was when we did the million stream episode. Like that was the last time, but that was like 15 minutes. But we haven't been able to do but we should bring this back, and we'll definitely figure out a day of the week where we can do it. But shout out to you guys. Remember, like both videos, subscribe to both channels, hit that notification bell on both channels as well for when we go live. For Jason, for Vish, we're out of here. Peace. Welcome everybody. Let's go Niners. My name is Jason Aponte.